Dringunzi, Shori Crystal Gale Fraser Vilji, Shiwan Kat Juliet Mary Bullock, Shannon to Inchu, to at Bruce Fraser Shite to Inchu, Guyet Si Dichu, to at Marca Andre Shichu to Inchu, to at Richard Bullock Shichi to Inchu, Anuvik to at Daichan Cho Genjik, Gwitsak Gwitchia Gwitchin Ithli. Hi, my name is Crystal Gale Fraser. It is an honor to be here in Winnipeg on Treaty 1. I am originally from Anuvik and our fish camp, Daichan Cho Genjik, on the Mackenzie River in what is now known as the Northwest Territories. I currently live in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6, and I am an assistant professor in history and native studies at the University of Alberta. I am also on the governing circle for the NCTR and on the National Committee for Residential School Missing Children and Unmarked Graves. It's a pleasure to join you today. This is my second time to Winnipeg, the first being a month ago for Remembering the Children. Okay, so we have basically 2 hours together this afternoon. And what this session is intended to do is to focus on health and wellness issues in the context of sharing information about any stage of a search. We are asking panelists to provide concrete examples of how to share information about searching processes in a way that is respectful, in a way that is culturally safe, and also trauma-informed. We want to talk about sharing information within the community carrying out a search, as well as sharing information with other Indigenous communities which may be affected. We also want to talk about effective ways to address media inquiries and relationships with media. So, I've been told to be an active moderator. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe I will break out in jumping jacks or something at some point. So what I envision is that possibly my experience as an intergenerational survivor, my experience as a historian and as a scholar of residential schools, and also somebody who has engaged with media quite extensively, particularly in the 18 months. Perhaps that will come of use at some point in this conversation. But for now, I would like to introduce our 2 panelists who will speak for about 10 minutes each. And then we're going to open it up to a conversation style among all of you and among us up here. So the first is Leah Ballantyne, and the second is Marcella Fontaine. And I will invite Leah up to introduce herself. Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge being on Treaty 1 territory. It's wonderful to be here again with all my friends and relatives. It's really nice to see everyone again. It's one of my first times back since the pandemic and the shutdown, so beautiful to see people from right across the country at this national gathering for unmarked graves. I have very limited Cree, but tanse, migiseo isqueo, nitiga sidan, pakadaga noche. My name is Leah Ballantyne. I come from Pakatawaga, Manitoba, and we are Treaty 6 territory. I'm also a 60s scoop, a member of the class, and my late mother went to the Guy Hill Indian Residential School in the PA. So today I'm really happy to share the room with about 25 or 30 of my family and community members from the Matthias Kalom Cree Nation. And if you look at the poster here, our project's called Bringing Our Children Home. And what we've done, we've actually combined our C92 Child and Family Service project along with the funding for the missing and undocumented children in graves. So what makes the project Bringing Our Children Home really unique in Puckatawagan is that we had a day school and an old nursery and a health center in Puck that is no longer physically there, and also the soils have been removed. And the initial ask for the funding pocket was to have those areas GPR'd, and also for the soil that was removed to have that relocated and that be processed for potential unmarked burials. And so with the government, it was actually a pretty challenging negotiation to get that funding, because there is no residential school site on the reserve at Puckatawagan. But a majority of our community members who were sent out to the schools got sent out primarily to Sturgeon Landing, former residential school site, which burnt down in 1954 and is located at the Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation Reserve. They have 10 reserves, and it's at Sturgeon Landing, Saskatchewan, so right on the border of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, just north of the Paw and south of Flin Flon. And then the second place that we had interest in participating and collaborating with other communities was for the GPR work for locating unmarked graves at the Guy Hill Residential School in Opaskwayak Cree Nation, the Paw, which is our neighboring community to the south of us, and they're part of the Treaty 5 territory. So we've successfully to date been able to create a collaboration with the OCN, and we're working with their team, and we will be conducting some GPR work in the spring and summer, and we will be doing that work and guided by the survivors. And so any kind of any protocol that we have an elders council, and it's a very fluid thing where, you know, people don't have to attend all of our meetings, and they can be very ad hoc. But the elders have collaborated in this process to tell us and guide us in this work how we should go about doing our research. And part of that, and you'll notice that I don't have a PowerPoint today to present for you. And the reason for that is that the Chief and Council in our community have expressly asked us to withhold any of that information. We're not quite ready to share that information with the world yet. But what we are doing, and the other thing that the elders and our leadership have guided us on, is documenting all of those survivor stories. So we're still in the process of collecting those survivor stories, whether they're from Sturgeon Landing Residential School or the Guy Hill Residential School. There's actually other residential schools that our band members attended, including Birtle, Fort Capel, Saskatchewan, and many others. So, you know, we're at the very beginning of our steps forward in this process. And it's been a real challenge because there's such a scattering of all the community members and survivors and what schools they actually attended. So we're again at the very early stages also in trying to work with the Archdiocese and the Oblates Mary Immaculate here in Winnipeg to access any of those archived documentation that may include missing members of our families and communities of Matthias Colomb. So I know that this particular panel is about addressing trauma and also how we would address media inquiries. Just for the same reason that I don't have a PowerPoint today to share with you, the Chief and Council and our Elders Council in Puckatawagan have expressed that they do not want to have any contact with the media until such time that we're ready with the video documentation of our survivor stories and also our intergenerational survivor stories, which we're going to be putting into about a 25-minute documentary. And that documentary is going to be the story that we collectively share with the world. And it'll be at that point that we might entertain other media communications. But until we reach that point in our project, we're not ready to attend to any media. Also in addressing all the intergenerational trauma and all the harm that's part of our histories and impacts each and every one of us in this room. And certainly over the last few days, there's been some really challenging moments. For us, I don't want to reinvent a wheel, but this is a toolkit that was developed by a friend of mine who I went to law school with, Myrna McCallum, and it's part of the Canadian Legal Education Society's ongoing work, and it's a toolkit to address trauma. So this is the guide to ensure that all the work that we're doing, and we know that everyone has a different level of trauma, but just to be sensitive about that and how there might be different ways that we can address that. So that's one of our guidebooks that we use, but also I've got my team of Bringing Our Children Home members and community members here, but we do have cultural and spiritual advisors. So Robert Caribou and Shirley Biggity, you can just give a wave. Yeah, they're fundamental in ensuring that each and everything that we do, including the very start of our project, we had pipe ceremonies, and we've given out medicine to community members. And you know, we're pretty far up north. We're about 810 kilometers north of Winnipeg here, and it's a fly-in reserve community. So sometimes getting really some of the basic things like medicines is not always a given, but we have our team members who make sure that we have all those tools and necessities that we need to conduct this work in a good way. And we always start this work with a ceremony and acknowledging our elders and community members. And so also here, along with our project team, is our leadership. We have Councillor Lorna Biggity. We have my brother Alan sitting at the table over there, and our Bringing Our Children Home liaise, Kristen Biggity, over at table 20. And over at table 33, we've got councillors Shirley Costell, Stephen Costell, and Selena Costell. And sorry if I missed anybody in the room, but you know, collectively we're all working together. This is new for all of us, and you know, as harmful as our histories tell us, what's really incredible about this project is it's actually bringing our families together and bridging some harms in a way that we can collectively as a community, without a political interference, if you will, to go forward and conduct this work. So I think my 10 minutes are up, and as part of the panel, I'm sure if you have any questions that, yeah, please keep them in mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. Marcella, can I invite you up?
Anin, wabshke makwa ikwe indigenikaz, makwa totem, sagin donji. My Christian name is Marcella, and I would like to acknowledge my chief that is here today. My colleague, I don't see him in the room. I work with another gentleman by the name of Eric Bunn, as well as some of our council members are here. I welcome you into our territory, Treaty 1. And I'd also like to acknowledge the other chiefs that are here. I saw Chief Nipanak, Chief Skeed, and if I miss anybody, I apologize. And importantly, I always acknowledge and honor my grandmother and my mom, my dad, aunts, uncles who are residential school survivors. And it's not my story, but my grandmother was in residential school for 16 years in Fort Alexander. So I always honor her by mentioning her. Our project in Saging, I was hired approximately 5 months ago. And during that time, the project started back in, I believe, July of 2021 with the ground search. So when Eric and I started, what we did was we started the community consultation process, meaning that we contacted and made a list of all of the residential school survivors from our community. We also looked at the list that we were given where there are 30 First Nations communities who had children attend the residential school in Fort Alexander. So through that, we made a list, we compiled a list, and started calling, speaking to our survivors, our elders. And our population is about 8,300 people. So between our work, we are dealing with on reserve, off reserve. And we have gone in and spoken to the survivors and asked them first if they were aware of the project and if they wanted to be involved and if they wanted to share their stories, their experiences. And most of them agreed, and most of them, I've known all my life. And within that, we speak Anishinaabe, and so that makes it a little easier. The other part of it is that I need to mention and I need to share that we are very mindful, we're very respectful of our community members, especially our residential school survivors, because we have to balance it out in terms of those church beliefs as well as our traditional beliefs. And that's come out, we've seen that a lot in our work. So we respect that, and we don't force anybody. If the elders tell us, survivors tell us, we don't want to go through that again, we don't want to, reopen, then that's fine. We thank them, and, we move on. What we've done as well, a very important part, through the direction of our chief and council, is we held a Chibai ceremony in the community. And the way that the ceremony works, for those of you that don't know, because I didn't know at first, but we lit a sacred fire for 4 days and 4 nights. We were fortunate enough that we had 4 young men from our community who watched the fire, and we checked on them every day to make sure that that fire, didn't go out. And the significance of that ceremony was to open the door for any, the scientific term is anomalies, or the little children that, were still in Saugeen. And we don't know if there are any. So that doorway was open for 4 days, 4 nights. And on the 4th day, we had a feast and a closing ceremony. And we gave prayers. We prayed for the little ones to find their way. Hopefully they made it home. And as well, we've held a lot of community meetings with our survivors, both in Winnipeg and in Saugeen. And we're finding that when we talk about trauma, when we talk about making space, and these are terms that are not familiar to many of our elders. I like the word elders because, anyway. So we use simple language. We use terminology that they're comfortable with. And we're finding that we are gathering, documenting a lot of information through our elders, survivors sitting there sharing. And, they use a lot of humor as well to get through everything. And it's very, it's a relaxed atmosphere. And we're very fortunate, both Eric and I, that, these elders know us from the community. So that's what makes our jobs a little easier. Now, when we've been, for me, when I've been interviewing survivors on their own, there are triggers, and, you know, where there's some emotional outbursts. And you just, you learn to take your time and give them that space. And when they're ready, then they begin to speak again. Because this is a very emotional, sensitive experience that our elders and survivors went through. And within our meetings, we smudge. We are going to be having more pipe ceremonies, calling upon those elders that, you know, will bring their pipes to our meetings. And of course, we've developed all of the documents that need to be signed, waiver forms for, you know, agreeing to share their stories, agreeing to take their pictures. So we are doing everything in a very respectful and proper way. The other part is with our elders and survivors. A lot of them, and this is, to me, it's great because they use a lot of humor when they're sharing their stories and their experiences, because a lot of them have shared that that's how they got through residential school. And we also have a lot of supports from our health center. We have cultural support, spiritual. We also call upon our traditional knowledge keepers in the community. Those that hold ceremonies or carry out ceremonies, and they are always there to help us. And we have approximately, I think we're up to 23 now, elders, survivors who are over the age of 80. And it's very humbling to sit and to listen to them. And we take our guidance from them. They are the ones that tell us how things should be run, because it's a community process. It's not mine, it's not Eric's, it's not anybody's. So, and we respect that. And, you know, we're very thankful that our elders and our survivors are able to tell us, like, you know what, you're still a young kid. You know, I have a lot to share with you. And that's what happens, and that's fine, that's great. And that way we're finding that they're sharing more and more. So they also support one another because they grew up together in residential school, they've grown up together in the community. And I believe, and I know that that's what's going to make this project a success. Like Leah mentioned, we will be documenting as well. And we haven't decided yet if we are going to write a book to compile all of the stories, but we are certainly videotaping the interviews that we have with the survivors. Before I finish off, I'd like to mention that, and I always give credit, I have a younger brother who's a historian, and I always say that Saging's been ahead of the game for many, many years. My brother published 2 books. The first one is Speaking of Saging. The second one is Speaking of Saging, Volume 2. And I brought a copy for Jennifer. I'm going to leave it with her. But I just want to quickly say that back in, I believe it was 2008, 2009, the residential school survivors, the men, had a project in Saging. And all of these men have passed on now. But fortunately, we have their stories recorded. They've been transferred into CDs, and they've been published. So, you know, I'm very thankful that we have that information, because that knowledge, those experiences need to be passed on to our younger children. And I could talk for hours, but anyway. Finally, any media questions can be directed to my chief, Chief Henderson, he's here, because any and all media questions go directly to the chief. So, miigwech.
Thank you both so much. Okay, I'm going to open it up right away to questions, comments, engagements from the audience. I believe we have 3 microphones in the room. I see someone coming up to microphone 2. Maybe I'll ask you to introduce yourself first, please.
Is this on? Yes. My name is Jay Jones. I'm part of the Shingwalk Residential School in Sault Ste. Marie effort as far as searching for unmarked burials. My question is, how do you reach out to this is for Leah. How do you reach out to the communities, the specific ways you reach out? Because Shingwalk, we narrowed it down to 84 communities that were affected by Shingwalk Indian Residential School. So now we're in the process of reaching out to those communities to ask the survivorship or families if they want to be involved in stuff. So how did you reach out to them specifically?
Thank you for your question. So that's actually the work in progress since we're in the very first year of our project. And we are basically working within our community right now with our elders council and the leadership, and we are just starting that process. But that would generate from we have our own separate Bringing Our Children Home project, and that would be a letter coming from me on behalf of the project to advance that. And the reason for that, and that it's not coming out of the chief and council's office, is that it's really important for this work to not have any political interference. Like, we all realize in our communities that there can be changes in leadership at any time, and this work is so imperative to the healing of our families and communities that we've already agreed to carry this project forward without allowing that type of fetter or interference. So those types of letters would come directly from the project, and we're still compiling our survivor stories and also our intergenerational survivors to find out how many communities that would be, because as far as we understand, we have at least 25 different residential schools that our own community members were sent to and had attended.
Miigwech.
Thank you.
For Marcella, when you reach out to the survivorship, and you said you asked them 2 questions, are you aware of the project, and then do you want to be involved? And what kind of feedback are you getting from the survivorship?
Well, it's been very positive, and it's. I always am grateful because I'm at an advantage because I know all of these elder survivors. So, as in any community, you always have a visit first, right? And then you lead into what you're there for. They're open, and they say, well, okay, what do you want? So we've explained the project, and they've said, okay, we heard about it, but we need to know more about it. And we, express that it's a community process, that it's not me, it's not Eric or Chief and Council that are leading this. It's our survivors, our elders. And yeah, they open up and they've started sharing their stories, experiences. Not all. I've had 6 now, and 3 of them are relatives, and were honest and said, no, this is just too much. And we respect that. So, yeah, that's what we've done.
I chuckled only for the reason the elders, the survivors that I work with at CSAA, I can picture them saying exactly that in the exact same way you just said it. So that just made me kind of laugh. I appreciate your words because the CSAA is moving forward almost in the exact same way both of you described your processes. And that's why I asked those questions, just to get a confirmation of, hey, are we doing this correctly and stuff like this? And I believe there's no correct way to do this because we're you know, we're in uncharted territory. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. And as long as you go to the survivors and ask them how they want to do it, I believe that's the most correct and honorable way to do this. So, miigwech for your thoughts and your efforts.
I would just like to mention one more thing, that we've had a lot of our elder survivors thank us for going to visit them, calling them, FaceTiming them, and they're very appreciative of that. So that's another side of it. You take your time and you go and visit them. So,
Yes, I agree.
Hi, miigwech, thank you.
I just wanted to add one other thing to that too, because a really important part of the work, as you're mentioning, is the breaking of bread and having a tea, doing those community visits. And we've had quite a number of community feasts and different activities in the communities. And again, just at the beginning of our project, we have at least 8 other satellite communities. So we have a lot of work ahead of us in reaching out to more of our community members. And then the other thing that's the imperative behind all of the project and any of the work that we undertake is something that UNDRIP has as free, prior, and informed consent. So we don't do anything at all without the consent of people. That would be verbal consent when we ask to sit down and have that tea. And if we're actually doing the interview with that survivor, we've got forms that we have to fill out for people so that we have their written consent. And so those videos and any of the interviews, which we might compile into a book to go along with that documentary, will be the property of the band and the community members themselves, but always with consent.
Thank you. I invite, I'm not sure if that's microphone 1 and 3. I got very confused this morning, but the person standing over here, please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Alrighty, Sego everyone. I'm Jesse Squire. I work for the Survivors Secretariat, and we work for our Mohawk Institute survivors. Over the past summer, we started our ground search, so we've been doing very well with that. I am actually in the process of working with my department. We are going to start the GPR analysis now to get all those wavy lines analyzed and look for the anomalies. Just moving forward, I did have a few questions for you. So I'm not going to direct them at anybody. Whoever has the itch to answer would be greatly appreciated. So down on Six Nations in the Mohawk Institute, we have 59 impacted communities, and our idea is to keep them engaged anyway, is our survivors gathering. So we get everyone down that attended the Mohawk Institute. They can mix, they can mingle. And moving forward, we had the idea of starting community champions. So one person from each of those 59 communities can kind of keep in contact with those in their local level. So that's what we've been planning on doing for that. But I was wondering if you guys had anything like a crisis communication template or ideas for that, for when we start finding anomalies and stuff like that. Do you guys have any kind of brainstorming to engage the community and inform them?
Miigwech for your question. I want to share that our elders, our survivors, one of their main concerns was onjene, meaning that you have to be very careful when you are scanning or when you are penetrating the grounds. A lot of our survivors, elders, asked us if we were digging up any land, any grounds, and we explained no, because that's not part of the project. And another thing was our elders made it very clear, you are not to scan the cemeteries, you are not to go anywhere near those. So that was brought out loud and clear, and we respect that. With that information, what we did was we work with Chris, who is the owner of Ultimax, who is doing the ground search work. And most of our elder survivors have told us just to be very careful, but we also tell them where we, have searched. And if you work with elders, they will guide you. And, one of the other, it's very hard to say everything in 10 minutes. But the other thing that we've done is we always offered tobacco to our elders, our survivors. And, because that's our protocol. And that's part of our life. So once you do that, and that's a big part of it, you will have your elders, your survivors open up, whether it's in a group or if it's individually. And that's been our experience. And we have a lot of qualified people in our community, at the health center, at the healing lodge that we have, who are there to help. All we have to do is pick up the phone. I don't believe anyway that it's a crisis yet in our community with, the anomalies. But yeah, getting guidance from the elders and survivors, because they're the ones that have that knowledge. They know, right? So, and they were also able to tell us, where some of the, where we should search. So, but they, with that type of work, our people need to be very careful, because we're dealing with, children, ancestors. Miigwech.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and it's really great to meet you. Our project, again, is in its early stages, so we're nowhere near GPR, but we have been provided the direction from survivors that absolutely there would be no digging up of any type of burial whatsoever. And I guess in the larger picture for media, that's one of the bigger misconceptions out there, that for average Canadian who is asking questions about how these projects go, the ground penetrating radar is just that, and it's non-invasive, and there would absolutely be no digging up of any buried remains, whatever anomaly that we find when we get to that stage. So yeah, we haven't quite gotten there yet, but that's basically our protocol for our community.
Alrighty, I thank you both for your answers, and it'd potentially be nice to start working together on this, because as I said, we're all pioneering this movement from province to province, nation to nation, so it's a big thing to deal with. And one thing that I understand you guys might not have the perfect answer, but we're trying to find a way, because we have a lot of northern remote communities, so we're trying to find a way that we can bridge the gaps and make sure they have supports and services that they need when our information will be released. If we find anomalies in the ground that meet the criteria for an unmarked grave, we're trying to find a way to network, because it's very broad. And I feel like you girls might have a little bit of experience with that, because you guys got some pretty remote places out here too. So how can we make sure that we have the best services available for impacted communities?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to add on to your comment and say that within our community, just getting this process started, we're already having an issue with capacity. And so that's the limited amount of funding that we got to start this whole process. And it's going to take an all-of-community approach. And we do have a lot of satellite communities, and so that's where it's going to come into play, where you're right, we need that champion from each community who can really move that forward. And, we're here in Manitoba on Treaty 1 territory, so our community is 800 kilometers north of here and scattered all throughout the boreal forest in Manitoba and within Saskatchewan, also in that Treaty 6 territory. So, the capacity needs, we know what they are, so that's something that we are going to collectively carry forward in the negotiation for our funding for the next fiscal period. And we don't know what that is, because all of this is such a new challenge for all of our communities to face these harms and traumas together in doing this really important work. We don't know what that looks like going on in the future, but we do know since the 215 that the Canadian government has to provide that commitment and that funding to assist us and all our nations in moving this work forward. And I think that coming to this conference is a really great way for us to meet and just talk about our baby steps moving forward collectively together.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Jesse. I'll go to the middle microphone now.
Hi, my name is Catherine. My spirit name is Askino Tuguyo. I'm from the Matthias Kalom Cree Nation, Treaty 6. I'm the mother of 12 children, 11 living. I have 30 grandchildren. And we're talking about bringing our children home, right? In our own different journey on it. Whether it's the children from the residential school, and I'm a third generation survivor, and the 60 Scoops children that came home, the children that are still coming home from child and family. I'm the only generation that got to raise my kids. And then my grandchildren were impacted by CFS, which we're still trying to heal. So I grew up in the bush till I was 7. And then I went to residential school for 3 years. Then we came to Winnipeg. So I've been here 47 years. And I tried to, well, I did, I didn't try, educate myself out of my ears, trying to prove to society that I was just as smart, just as knowledgeable, and that I could do what others are doing on top of raising my kids and going to school and trying to make changes. Until this residential school thing came out, I was in my own little world trying to break cycles. And then my children and my grandchildren got impacted again, and I went back to square one. And then I started getting involved in stuff where all the systems that are swallowing us up. And I feel like we're just going in circles, circles, circles. And I don't think the government wants to fix this because we're a huge economy to Canada. So I prayed and prayed and prayed as I embraced my traditional way of life, learning about ceremony, but boy, it's expensive to be a ceremony person. You have to have gas, you have to have ribbons, you have to have all these things, and it takes money. And I think that's part of the roadblocks we have to healing, because it's expensive to go to these ceremonies. But anyway, I felt like I was like a little mouse running in that wheel. And then I was praying and praying, crying to Creator God, what's the answer? And I remembered my grandfather, my parents, after their ordeal in residential school, they went back to the land. And that's where I seen them heal. But as soon as they went back to the cities, the towns, the reserves, that's when all the addictions came out, all the anger came out. And when we go home to our trap line, we're healing, we're happy there. My children, believe it or not, my grandchildren don't even want to come back here. So that's what our vision is. For us, it's bringing our children home back to the land. Because we've done a lot of work to heal and not live over here. Because our children want to have a happy life, right? Our grandchildren. I can say I healed because I don't have that anger, that bitterness, that hatefulness, that vengeful, that ugliness. I've forgiven. And I've worked a lot on myself. I've cried many tears. I think when they named me Askino, which means virtual woman, they forgot to add on the crying. So our vision and our dream is to go back to the land. I asked one elder, how do we do that? And he looks at me and says, you just move there. Simple. But then my family wouldn't even let me because they said, you don't even know how to shoot a gun or chop wood. But that's where our dream is. And I pray, because we're all on a different journey and where we're at in healing, right? But I pray our leadership supports us in those dreams and in those visions, and that they're not the roadblock, because we don't think the same. Because we're all different people on a different healing in our journey. It doesn't always look the same. So leadership and the non-Indigenous people here, a lot of us want to go back to the land. Apparently, I'm an outsider in my own reserve. That's what I'm told all the time. But I'm not when I'm in the land. So please, leadership, support us in our visions and in our dreams. Because when people try and support us, they say, your chief and council has to support you in order for us to help you. So listen to the grassroots people. I always say, ask us. Ask us what it is that we need, because we know what it is that we all need. And I thank you for the people responsible for paying that huge ticket, because I can't afford it, because I don't even have an income with me and my 2 kids. But Creator still takes care of me. And I think that's part of the reason that I've been healing too, because I'm taking myself out of systems and learning to rely on our community, our family, to help us when we're down there, and stop doing this to the government. Because we are smart. We can do it on our own with our allies out there. There's lots. We just need to find them. So I stopped doing this, because if we keep doing that, it's going to be such a slow process. And that's my dream, is to go back to the land where we can heal. Because even I was watching a thing on TV, you know, when we, on the grounds, the cement and whatever, the blood cells stay almost on top of each other, not moving. And you take your shoes off and you go on the ground, your blood flows. And I think that's why we're not healing, because we're in the city. But thank you, panel, and thank you for listening to my 2 cents.
Ginanas Kumitana, my relative from Pakanawagan. And maybe sometimes we all feel like outsiders. And again, to be at a conference like this, in a national gathering, it's really important that we make these connections, and maybe we all have these different feelings, but we're actually collectively here together. The one comment that I might make for you sharing your story is that there is a part of our project where we do have trapline holders and other people who have community camps. And so part of what we would like to do to develop the capacity for the healing aspects of this project is to build those cultural camps and sustain them, so that people have the option to do land-based teachings and healings. And that all Indigenous law and Indigenous knowledge, our ni, the law and knowledge, comes from the land. You know, you're not going to find it in a book. You might find it in a rock. And so to reconnect with that, that's part of the capacity building that we're hoping that we can achieve in moving forward with our project for bringing our children home.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And if I could just add one thing to that. you know, as a historian, I have been trained to work in archives with archival documents, and we know that about 99% of what resides in the archives are written by, you know, non-Indigenous white men who were affiliated with Christian churches or who were Indian agents or representatives of the state, and that's one of the things that I've tried to address in my work is interviews with survivors, is having a community engaged process right from the proposal stage. So you're doing work that is valued and important, but also needed. And because my academic training, you know, really prioritizes archives and written word, sometimes I feel like even as a Gwich'ya Gwich'in, even having living relatives who were institutionalized at Grolier Hall and Immaculate Conception Residential School in Aklavik, that I'm still really missing key pieces of the story and experiences. And one of the elders who I work with, Dr. Sharon Firth, you may know her as a four-time Gwich'in Olympian for cross-country skiing. One of the things that she shares with me on a regular basis is when I don't know things and when I feel bad about asking questions. She says, you know, Crystal, you just have to give your head a shake. And at first, I wasn't sure what to make of that. I've always heard that phrase in a little bit of a negative connotation. And then she explained to me that, you know, as Indigenous peoples, we document in different ways. We keep most of our knowledge up here. And so when she said, give your head a shake, she says that little gems will fall out of your head. You will access knowledge that you didn't even know that you had, that it is there within us, it is there within our communities, that we have the answers. Like Murray Sinclair said last night, it's getting over our minds and to our hearts. Sorry, I just see Jackie. Is that Jackie there? I didn't mean to go on, Jackie. Would you like to make a comment or question?
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Jackie Bouvier. I'm a survivor of Treaty 10 Beauval, Saskatchewan residential school. My father was Métis who worked for the Beauval residential school. My mother attended residential school also. She was Dene in Cree. She died in 1999 at 92 years old. She spoke 7 different languages. 2 of her babies are buried somewhere. They were the 2 older ones. She thinks they died of malnutrition because she was breastfeeding. One was 1 year, and the other girl was 9 months. I'm standing up here. I have a lot of trauma in regards to no help. No help from the First Nations, where she comes from, which is English River in Patronac. They say to go to the band council. I'm not First Nations. I'm Métis. Nothing is happening with the Métis also, so I'm stuck by myself. So I'm dealing with this, and this was my mother's dying wish to find out where they're buried. She kind of had an idea they're buried in where the cemetery is up in the hill in the Mission. So I'm working with Keisha and the group. We're trying to get the records. I've got the birth dates, the names, and I'm doing it all on my own. And I'll fight and I'll do it on my own. But it's hurting me in a lot of ways. Like my son said, I adopted a son, he's 45. I live in Vancouver now. And I work with youth in the downtown east side. They're from across Canada. They call me Kukum. They're living in tents. They don't want to go into shelters. They pull up a little chair for me. They make lukewarm tea for me, and I sit there. I don't make judgments with them. They've got trauma. You know, generation and generation of trauma. So I'm there for them, and they're there for me. All they ask for is a hug. And I don't make judgments with them in the downtown. They're from across Canada. They come to Vancouver thinking it's God's country. So what I would like to say is, I guess I'll have to do it on my own, go to the Meadow Lake Tribal Council. Any ideas from anyone how to do with it? How to, you know, my mom belonged to the band, and it's just, you know, one of the 9 under the Meadow Lake Tribal Council. I know the Métis won't do anything. Nothing's happening in Alacrosse. I went to Alacrosse school too. So I just want to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miigwech. I just want to say miigwech to both of you beautiful women for sharing. Have you tried the FSIN? Have you gone to them?
They say to go to the band council.
Yeah, one of the best supports that the Matthias Colomb Cree Nation has had in our project actually came from Cowessess. So Chief Cadmus Delorme was so fundamental in helping us with some of the first steps. And in fact, he invited our team and our leadership from Matthias Colomb to attend the first anniversary of the findings at Marival from a residential school. So that's also another, potential option for you to seek out some assistance, because Cowessess is working with the University of Regina, I believe, and potentially the University of Saskatchewan. But I also know that the FSIN would help and support in any way that they could.
Thank you. Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Selena Castell, Matthias Colomb Cree Nation. I just got elected as councillor. Anyways, this is right off topic in regards about our residential school. In 1998, I worked for, I didn't know what residential at that time, till I worked with Terrence Head, a lawyer for Opaskwayak Cree Nation at the time. He was doing a work for Opaskwayak Cree Nation. And quite a few of those, his clients were all First Nation across this nation. And I have translated for him. It was really, really hard to translate information like that when they were just slowly coming out. And those chiefs of 1998, Chief Pascal Biggity, Chief William Laughlin, Chief from Nelson House, Chief from our northern communities, and the chiefs that sat to push that residential school at that time. And that year in 1998, the Cree Lance Runners, we ran for our residential school to open up that light that year. And what I'm trying to say, we have to recognize those leaders that actually pushed that residential school to come to light, and the elders that came to light, who brought out their stories. Because it's not just residential, it's the hospitals that hid so many of our children. And that book that I opened up, not knowing what I was looking at, it was thick, so thick, I might have been the last one to hold it, because soon as we gave it back to the leaders, I have never seen that book open again. And for me to call my grandfather that day, I asked who Thomas Castell was. and the other end went dead silent. I could hear it in my grandfather's voice that he was choked about it, that his granddaughter, me, asking who this person was, because there was so many list of children that were on that document. And it was actually one of the elders here in this, that were here that asked me to bring this issue out. What I've heard, what I've seen, and it's time that our people here today, start recognizing our lawyers at that time that pushed it, our chiefs at that time that pushed it. You know, it was not just recently, it's been pushed by so many leaders to open this, start recognizing them and start giving them those feathers that even most of them are still alive today. Some of them have passed on. Give them that honor for those chiefs that actually pushed this to bring this to light. Because we ran right to Alberta, Hobbema, just to bring that light up. And those elders, those chiefs that sat there and the elders that ran, they opened it up and then brought those issues to the ministers at that time in that teepee, where they opened up the 100 years of that pipe, those 2 pipes that I seen personally, Wounded Knee pipe and that treaty pipe that hasn't been opened up yet. So I'm asking our nation to start honoring them and give them that honorable for our leaders at that time. Thank you. He was it.
Ego says, Selena, that's really, your words are powerful and a really good reminder, all that work that Terrence had. And I think I saw Ken Young in the room, and I know that he was fundamental as one of the lawyers in OCN in the day to, along with former National Chief Phil Fontaine, to push forward for residential schools and the recognition of all the harms. So here we are today, and I think that your comments could actually, because everything's on the record here and recorded, we could ask the special interlocutor for that directive to help us pull together all of those other resources that people have worked on in the previous generations or decades, that they can be brought to the national office, the National Truth and Reconciliation Office, as well as the Special Interlocutor's Office, so that we can start sharing that information, or maybe put it on a database or something like that, so that we can access all that information and make sure that we can add that to the records that we're looking for right now. And that also part of the whole process of finding unmarked graves and looking for our missing children has to do with commemoration and memorialization of that. And we're not there yet, but that's definitely something that could also be in the directive for the special interlocutor.
Miigwech, that was very powerful. And I thank you for bringing that important point to this room and for these people to hear that, because that's very important. You know, it's important that we recognize the efforts and, you know, why we're here today, and all of the good work that, you know, these chiefs did, these leaders, and so I want to thank you for that, because it needs to be heard.
Thank you, Selena. One very short point to add is my observation is that we also tend to forget about the parents who experienced having their children removed, and the activism of Indigenous families and communities at the time, even in the early 1900s, writing letters, approaching missionaries, going to institutions and physically removing their children, being threatened with prosecution under the Indian Act, fines and imprisonment. So really over a century of activism and pushback by our people. Please,
Yes.
welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Terry Brown. I'm from the Tahltan Nation in northern British Columbia. and I'm a survivor of 2 residential schools in the Yukon, Yukon Hall and Kildare residents. And I just want to speak and remember my classmates, because many of them have passed on. Many, they did not die at the schools, but the hurt and the pain that they live with took their lives, I believe, to mainly addictions. From my nation, there was about a family of 4 members from this family were sent to Gruard in northern Alberta. And 2 of the siblings did not return home. And the other ones came home. They were at the school for, until they were of age, I think 16, when they kind of booted you out. They came home and 2 of the siblings were missing. And their mother asked, where's Tony and Yvonne? Tony and Yvonne Tibbet, I want to give them their names because I want to honor them at this conference. And the brother and sister said, well, Mom, you didn't know that they died. And they died at the school, and no one knows exactly where. I don't know if there's a cemetery. I believe that they started searching the grounds, did they not, in Alberta, at Gruard? Do you know, Keisha? Or what? Sorry, I forget your name.
Marcella?
Me? Yeah.
Oh.
No, the girl at the
Oh,
podium.
Crystal. Yes.
Yeah, I believe they have started the searching, but the problem is that's a long ways from my home in northern British Columbia, which is like about 100 miles off the Alaska Panhandle. And so to have people and that was part of the strategy, is to break the families, to send them all over into different schools. And so they've had not any contact. And their sister, who's still alive, I believe is about 85 years old. And her daughter, I've spoken to her daughters, and I've spoken to her years ago about their death. And the daughters had said that they want their family members brought home. So I don't know where it's going with that. I hope that when, over this few months, I can meet with the family and talk to them and find out if they're still requesting to do that, and how we can proceed with that and connect with the people in northern Alberta to bring more information to the family. So I don't know if anybody has chosen to bring family members home, and what the process would be. What I'm sure it's very involved if that is what they want to do. But I think that whatever the family wants to do needs to be done, because if there's going to be closure, the mother of the 2 children died about 10 years ago, and I believe she was in her late 90s. And so she never did have any comfort or closure on her children and what happened to them. So I think we need to be prepared to offer what we can if the children are to be brought home. And I'm wondering if anybody has experience with that, if it can help out the family in some way. And I just want to honor all the survivors who are here today. And thank you all so much for your courage in attending a conference like this. It's very, very moving, and it's very, very difficult. So I thank you again. And every time it stirs up a lot of feelings in our lives, and brings about a lot of hurt. When the children in Kamloops were found, the way it affected me, I just didn't have any energy, and I think I laid in bed for quite a few days. And my kids kept calling me, and because as a survivor, I was so used to putting it all away and just hiding and leaving it all. That was the first time my kids had a big reaction to what was going on, and I'm sure a lot of our kids did. And the stories of our youth speaks through that opioid crisis in British Columbia. Our kids are dying in the streets. And as it was said, someone mentioned that, a lot of the services were removed. And that was too bad because they were very effective services who were at the community level, and we need to rebuild that somehow. I was involved with the TRC on the Survivor Circle. I want to say that I don't believe that we were properly debriefed or we were properly looked after, because after the TRC, it was very serious for me suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I had to go into treatment and I couldn't, and the problem is you can't find places to go for this treatment. I had to go to Ontario, and there's a place on Vancouver Island, but the waiting list is just horrendous. I mean, it's so difficult to get into any kind of healing. And, you know, of course, people can have relapses and can suffer in that way. But I just want to thank the survivors and send you all the love from my homeland, Ballantyne territory, and take your love to your people in your homelands. And thank you very much for being here. Gives me much strength when I hear you all talk, and be so brave. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry, and glad you made it here from your Ballantyne territory. I'll glean from your comments that maybe it'll be another directive to the special interlocutor, because this is where we're going to have the most challenging opposite opinions about how we move forward after the ground penetrating radar happens. Because there will be some communities and families who actually would want to do the exhumation and maybe even a DNA analysis of whatever those findings are in that unmarked grave. So I think that is something that really the special interlocutor should really look into that. I think that that's something that international law can address, because there are different international legal norms around unmarked graves and mass burials that have affected different countries in the world after wars and things like that. So this is a genocide. This is no different. And so we need to apply that level of law to what these potential protocols or policies, I don't know what we want to call them, because there will be other communities who don't want to do any exhumation. I mean, some people might just want to do the GPR and find those anomalies and try and find the names through all the documentation of the missionaries and the Catholics, the institutions and the government. So, you know, that's where I think that that's going to be a dialogue that'll carry everybody in this room forward for quite some time.
I believe that from what I've read and what I understand, there was a tribe in South Dakota, and I can't remember which one it was, but they brought, don't quote me on this, but I think 4 of their children home from a residential school down in the States. So I'm not sure if you have that kind of information, Crystal. But
I can find it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was on the news, and I believe that the family did some fundraising to make that happen. So.
Good. Thank you. Hello.
Hi there, thank you very much. My name is Jim DeRocher. I'm an elder. I'm 82 years old and a survivor of the Isle La Crosse boarding school. And the biggest problem that we have in Isle La Crosse, the boarding school issue, is that it has not been recognized as a boarding school to this date. And it's causing a lot of problems and a lot of grief. As you heard Jackie speak earlier here today, she doesn't know where her brother and sister are buried, you know, and these are some of the issues that we're dealing with right now. And I think it's very important for the special interlocutor, whatever that name means. It's kind of new to me, but I hope she has the power to force the government to recognize the Isle La Crosse boarding school. For just a little bit of history, Isle La Crosse is one of the oldest communities in Western Canada. As a matter of fact, it was established in 1776, the same year as the American independence was established as well. And Louis Riel Sr. was born in Isle-Lacrosse. Louis Riel's sister, Sarah Riel, is buried in Isle-Lacrosse. We have a lot of history in our community, and it's really important for the governments to recognize and treat the boarding school survivors of Isle-Lacrosse in the same way that they treat the First Nations people. And I'm not trying to be negative with the First Nations people. I totally agree that they should have been treated in a better manner than they were treated. You know, they should have, they were recognized as one of the big problems that the federal government had in the area of residential schools. And I agree with that. But governments have a tendency to play games. They played games with us all throughout history. You know, they have the power to put in legislation. They have the power to put in all sorts of rules and regulations to control us, and we can't allow that to happen anymore. You know, it's very important for each and every one of us to understand that. Many of us here today are dealing with trauma. You know, we don't even have any mental health people where I come from. And we need a lot of help in our community, because there is a lot of damage that was done to our people. And one of the biggest issues we have there is the survivors. There's only approximately 75% of them are dead now. They're gone. They'll never see nothing. They'll never be dealt with. They'll never, you know, the federal government has not even apologized to the Métis people in this country. And that's really, really important for the special interlocutor to look into very seriously and try and deal with that issue. And as of today, I am asking the special interlocutor to come to Isle-Lacrosse and come and look at our community, because it wasn't just the community of Isle-Lacrosse that was involved. All the surrounding communities had kids that came to that residential school in Isle-Lacrosse. We call it a residential school, and it's really important that we have a lot of history in that community. So, with that, you know, I am asking that the special interlocutor come to our community of Isle-Lacrosse and come and deal with that issue. And you know, my dad's uncles were attending the Beauval Residential School, which is only about 30 miles away from Isle-Lacrosse. And so the same people that were teaching and dealing and officiating over the residential school in Beauval, sometimes they would exchange and come to Isle-Lacrosse. So it was the same people that we were dealing with all these years. And so it's really important for each and every one of us here to try and push the federal government and the provincial government in Saskatchewan and the churches to get together and deal with the survivors. There's not very many of us left. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments and sharing your story. And it looks like we're running out of time on our panel, so I just want to offer a little bit of hope in how things can change. So, you know, when the TRC was doing their work, Justice Sinclair in the report, they had to couch the word genocide with cultural genocide, because Canada would not allow them to use the word genocide. And so now we look after Kamloops 215, and here we are today. We're all sitting in the room having this dialogue. And now we've actually been able to change that lexicon, like how we describe what's happened to all our people, all of our families. and we use the word genocide. It's no longer couched in a phrase of cultural genocide. It is a genocide, so it is what it is. And what's really important even about moving that little lexicon mile marker forward, which we have collectively done that together, is that that attracts international law and a whole different level of accountability that the Canadian government owes each and every one of us in this room. So, you know, don't lose heart, don't lose hope. Like we're all moving this together. There are different schedules of residential schools, and some are not on that list to be recognized. And I would even argue the same thing for the day schools. Some of those day schools are going to have a GPR and their own testing and searches in those areas. So, and it's not just the day schools either. There were a lot of sanatoriums that were attached to these residential schools that we haven't even talked about. So, you know, I hear you saying that Île-Lacrosse needs to be part of that list, but we could expand that list by any institution that was run by the federal government or the churches, or any institution that was built by the government to be investigated and part of this work going forward. So thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Jim. As far as I know, we have until 4:30. Is somebody able to confirm that for me? That's what's on the schedule, until 4:30? Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. So we have another half an hour. Did you have anything to add?
Okay, I just, again, I'm going to say this. We don't have enough time in 10 minutes. One of the other things that we've done is we approached our survivors' elders to put together a committee to guide the overall process, because it is a community process. So that, you know, is one area that we have the list of names, we just have to approach them. The second thing is that we've included the Ultimax, the, you know, Chris and his team. And he sat with the elders, and the elders have told him and his team to be very careful. And, you know, they actually advise them, you know, to attend our ceremonies. So they probably will. So that's some of the other things that we're doing. We are going to have a committee of 8. 4 from the community, that live in the community, and then 4 from off, that live in Winnipeg or, you know, in other communities. So, because we did have a lot of community members as well attend the residential school that I know of anyway, in Ontario, by Kenora, St. Mary's. I remember my uncles and my father attended that school. So all of this information is coming to light as we're meeting, and you know, the survivors, their memories are triggered by one another. If they share, you know, funny stories of how, you know, they would, how they say, for example, if one elder shared how one of the guys was selling lard in residential school because there was no butter. They weren't allowed, like, even bread sometimes, right? So those types of things really, it helps, because it brings out their humor, but it also allows them to remember in a good way and to share with us what, you know, they went through. And our people are good with humor, and they're healing that way. So, miigwech.
Thank you. Okay, I see 2 more people at the microphone. I've just been asked to remind folks here that at the back, the special interlocutor has note takers. And so the ideas that are generated here are being recorded, and it is going to be what comes out of this conversation that helps the Office of the Special Interlocutor create these directives. And so please, if you have ideas or comments or questions, please come to the microphone and share them with us. Go ahead. It's not very loud, the middle microphone. Maybe try again.
There's no red light. I think it may have died. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
There we go.
yes.
Okay. So I've heard the term "bring our children home," and that can come in many forms. And what we've done at Children of Shinwalk at Shinwalk Indian Residential Schools, we've done a lot of fact finding. We're fortunate enough to have a Canadian research chair in archaeology at our disposal, and she gave us a lot of information. But we did our own digging too. So when you physically mean bring our children home, what I would ask you to do if your community is thinking of that is to really investigate all the ramifications of doing that, because it opens up a whole new set of challenges. It's not, and I've also heard the community saying, we're gonna do a GPR scan if we find an anomaly. What we're gonna do is memorialize it. How we're gonna do that yet, we haven't decided. But overall, we decided that, and this was a spiritual connection, both Indigenous and Christian, because we have Christians that we interface with. But with all the talk that we had, so far what we decided is just not to exhume, just to memorialize. Because if you exhume, then like I just said, there's a whole set of challenges. And it's not easy challenges, and it's not guaranteed. So what I would suggest that you do, if you do want to do that route, is really investigate it, because it becomes it can be difficult. And not only in a nuts and bolts kind of way, but in a spiritual way and triggering way with the survivorship. I can't imagine going to 84 communities asking for their DNA to try and see if the remains that we found belong to one of those family members. And if we get that DNA all collected and we get the hopes up of those people, of those families, and then that DNA does not match anyone or a family that really got their hopes up. So there's a lot of things to think about when you want to actually bring the remains home. And I wanted to say that just so you do your homework, you decide upon yourselves on what you want to do. Another suggestion would be bring a piece of the earth, if it be in the cemetery or if it's in the area of an anomaly. Maybe dig up a piece of earth, have a ceremony, and bring that piece of earth back to your home community. So there are other ways that you can memorialize. There are other ways that you can bring your children home. So I just wanted to give you some ideas to think about and some of the challenges that you may face. So, miigwech, thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Bonjour. Kemianaj, Dishnakas. Opske Makwa, Dishnakas. Makwa and Dodem. Wabagoon and Donje. I have grown up here in Winnipeg, Treaty 1 area for most of my life. I'm Adzuke Winani, a storyteller, so I was curious to take in this session, particularly as it relates to interfacing with the media, because technically I am working in the media, but I'm an independent filmmaker. I've made movies, documentaries. We're currently doing one called The Cover-Up for TVO, APTN, Hollywood Sweden Knowledge Network. And we've been shooting since the Apology in Rome. And so it's been really interesting the last number of months, exploring stories of survivors, interviewing the churches, including the bishop in Edmonton, the head of the Anglican Church in Toronto. What has been a bit of a challenge for us on a quote-unquote journalistic perspective is this question that has come up in the discussion this afternoon about the unmarked burials and what to do. And of course, I am working with a non-Indigenous co-producer, and he's got a journalistic ethic that of course we have to adhere to because we are doing documentary work. But he did a documentary, he's Jewish, and he did a documentary on Nazi hunters. So the gist of our documentary is the same, except that we are looking for priests and nuns and clerics who are still alive, and we found a handful of them. We've also been able to work with some survivors and have them meet and encounter, in particular, the two nuns that we found in Ottawa. So that's part of our story. That being said, I just wanted to go back to, you had mentioned the interlocutor is taking notes and so on. What's interesting to me is whether there's been any consideration, because the vast majority of non-Indigenous Canadians, they want the proof, and that's a difficult thing. Obviously, we know, we've talked about it in this room for the reasons why we don't need anything other than GPR. But I'm just wondering whether the federal government is going to carry on funding these efforts if there's no quote-unquote evidence, you know what I mean, like physical evidence. And so that's a question I wanted to put out there, but also to let people know I am here, and if you have any stories, any leads, anything, we're still shooting for the next 4 or 5 months, and we intend to be at the Toronto International Film Festival next year, and then it'll be in movie theaters, and then it'll be on the networks that I mentioned in 2024. So with that, miigwech.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing your efforts on the on your documentary. Absolutely. That's a real tricky question, and with my non-native Canadian friends, I have had that discussion, because when the 215 came out, people were saying, well, how would you know what an anomaly is in the ground unless you dig it up and expose it, and you can put it in a court of law and put an exhibit sign on it, and that's what it is. That's so offensive that we have to have these conversations with our non-Indigenous neighbors. I really, just to acknowledge that conversation does happen. I mean, it's a difficult one, but personally, like, I wouldn't think that the exhumation would be a requirement for any one of these projects with their GPR. I do believe it is enough to memorialize and commemorate. I think that to exhume would be re-triggering that harm and that trauma all over and again in a way that we could not contemplate. So yeah, that's definitely something that's a wider debate, and I've heard that, and we read, actually, there are deniers in Canada. There were a couple articles in the National Post, if you go back about 6 months, that had that very topic in the key part of their article. So yeah, with the media, when there's something like that, again, maybe it's a directive for the special interlocutor that when there's some type of denial that there is unmarked and mass graves, that the special interlocutor should have at least a team of lawyers or writers or somebody to at least counter that kind of propaganda type dialogue in the media.
Yes, it's an interesting point that you made about, providing proof, because I went through the same thing. One of the comments I'd like to make is that our elders, regardless where they live, right, will always protect their community. They will always protect the children, the youth, the future generations, right? And that's come out loud and clear in our meetings with our survivors, our elders, is they've told us that we have to think of the little ones and the ones that are in the future, and to be very, very careful. And we respect that, and we're listening to that, because that's very important as well. You know, when they're talking about, you know, the ground search, right? Because a lot of them don't understand. And they want to know what that really means and what it entails. So, right.
Thank you for that question. And I think the residential school denialism is more prevalent sometimes than we think. Historian Sean Carlton, who works here at the University of Manitoba, has written about denialism, and it's not necessarily that folks don't believe that residential schools operated, but it is the stories around it. And as somebody who you know, works with the NCTR, who is at U of A, whose email address is easily found, the hate mail that comes in about residential schools, about we're making these stories up, we are bribing GPR companies to produce these kinds of results, I think is a real problem. And I see you in the middle there at the microphone. We have about 10 minutes left. I just want to say that the current directives that I have in my notes so far from this session is recognizing leadership and folks who came before us who advocated for these kinds of histories, questions about the actual physical nature of bringing children home, what that entails. Third, you know, institutions that are not recognized, including Indian sanatoria, including boarding schools, including student orphanages, receiving homes, and then fourth, a possible directive around questions related to the media and residential school denialism. Welcome.
Thank you. You said 4:30, so we got, what, 15 minutes? Okay. Again, my name is Kata Simbines. For your ideas, what you talk about here, where is this person that's recording?
Where are the note takers? Where are they in the room? Are you able to wave your hand if you're with the special interlocutor? Right here at the front.
Okay. There's many things that we are doing all across this country and countries, USA and Canada. We all know this because we're all related to each other. We have blood, brothers and sisters here across the line, that medicine line. There is no borders for us. But there are as many ideas. And a lot of us are doing our due diligence all across our land. With what was done in the past, and that's not long ago, with the survivors, some were given $300,000, $350,000. That's nothing. They should have been given $10 million each, $15 million, $20 million. All those children that are here now and present, the young people, this could have been doctors, lawyers, company owners, all across this land. And I told that to many lawyers. I told that to the feds, because I got asked to sit and listen to those stories, to bring my pipe there, to bring my prayers, to connect. for the folks. But we're not done yet. There are places across this country that have healing centers, okay? We need more of that. What we need more of is health centers run by us. We have doctors, we have nurses, we have health professionals all across this country. We could run those health centers. It's no problem. But it takes money. You talk about healing. That's one idea right there that will make a great effect and turn that around and reverse everything. It may take about another 100 years, but we'll do it. I do it. I go to Toronto and do it. And I've been doing it for about 16 years over there. And communities all over the place. I know it works. Because a lot of my clients come to me. And it's helped them. We need more places like this across this country, on our land, where we have ownership. Not people telling us what to do. Because we already know what to do, and we've been doing it for over 100 years. Our elders from our past, our grandmas and great-grandmas, they've been doing it. I can say this because my grandma and my grandpa did it with us. And we lost a lot of family members too. All of us. But here we are. We can build these health centers. We can build these facilities to tackle all of these issues. Diabetes, cancer, trauma, alcohol, drugs, violence. We can do it. And we have been doing it. A lot of people across this country, a lot of pipe carriers and upping pipe carriers all across this country upon our land. Can you imagine how much pipe carriers they killed and they murdered medicine people? That's lots. But here we are. There's most of us here that are fortunate we're still here. And that's spiritual. I'm living proof. I see faces here that's living proof. Like this gentleman right here. I've known him for quite a while. He does the same work too. There's us out there that can do this work. So you take that back to Ottawa and you tell them, hey, we could do this. Just give us the money to build these health centers. Well, at these health centers, we'll have sweat lodges, we'll have medicines, we'll have all of this. We could work with general practitioners and RNs and everyone, every health professionals. Because what we were taught as young boys and young women by our grandfathers and grandmothers, they were health professionals also in their own rights within our traditions and within our sacred laws, both Canada and the USA. Give us the money. We'll build these places. But we want ownership. We have the people. This is the year 2022. We've been learning and sharing and passing on these traditions for a long time already. And our youth are ready, way ready a long time ago. We can do it. So let's all heal together, no matter what color your skin is. In our language, there's no such word as racism. I don't know how to say that. There's not even a word for a war. But I understand of the old ones, ke tewe asik. Those are dinosaurs. Ashingosum, that's a mammoth. We've been here for a long time. We didn't cross no Bering Strait. That's for dang sure. You know, I've had friends from India, old guys. They told me they used to sit with their elders, and there was old people used to tell them they came from here. And if you look at their ceremonies, they always start with the fire. And we start with the fire. That's a very strong connection there that we understand to the best of our abilities. But to go back to what we can do, we need health centers in our cities, towns, in our communities. I don't like calling them reserves because they're not. They're our communities. Reserves is just another form of colonization, and within that word, this damn language doesn't make any sense sometimes. But when you understand the language and speak the language, it tells a story and it makes a lot of sense. Just like our songs and our dance. I say, Kichimiwach, Kinanakunim, Piramaya, Hi Hi, Ego say, Masichu.
Masicho.
Do we have time?
Yes, we have time, please. You might need to move the microphone down.
Turn this first. Mia, okay. Natawa sik ndigo makondotem nineo meteo. I come from Kenora, Ontario, where St. Mary's School used to be. I was there 13 years. And the reason why, when I was there, I thought we were the only ones in that school. I never thought there was any other schools across Canada, but I soon learned that in a hurry. In about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe on the 2020, when they had the Truth and Reconciliation, that's when I knew that there were other schools around. But the reason why I'm saying this is because this Truth and Reconciliation, we only had a few people running it in the city of Kenora. We didn't have it yet in our community, in our Anishinaabe community. But when they asked my husband if he wanted to be a part of it, he said okay. So that's how I came to be on that Truth and Reconciliation, to which I'm starting to understand. The reason why I'm saying this is because since they found the children who never made it home in Kamloops, you know, this is a message that they're telling us as Anishinaabe people, that they want to come home, they want to be found as long as they know where they are. And as a grandmother and great-grandmother, you know, I say that the children are the ones who have brought us close together here as across Canada, which we never even met other people from the north, east, west, and south. And that's the reason why I always tell my children, even in the community where I come from, when we have these sessions, we have them about twice a month for the residential school. So I'm saying that, you know, that we have to respect the children whom we love, they love us as a grandmother, grandfather, when they're hurt or don't know where to go or what, they look upon us for answers, and we usually give them those safe houses. Help me, Coach. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Hello, go ahead, please.
Hello, I'm a residential school survivor. My name is Gordon. And I went to a residential school in Guy Hill for 9 years. I lost my identity, my language, my parents, my grandparents, and I became an alcoholic for many years, 16 years at the most. And it was a hard journey for me, but I asked support, and I'm getting support from surrounding communities, and especially Rob over Carabo here. He comes to the Sundance every summer to practice our traditional things that the elders have taught us before. I live in Leaf Rapids, and I'm living that residential school hurt again because the Manitoba government is trying to get rid of the people because the mine closed. We want to ask for help from our band to help us get something done about our community, because there's lots of alcoholism and drug abuse, and it's hard living around surrounded by alcohol and drugs. I've been sober for 37 years, and I'm trying to help them, but it's been a hard journey. I'm living that past again, but I pray to the Creator every day for help, and He sends me these people to help me heal myself and to others. I'd like to thank the panel for everything they're trying to do to open up to the government, because we have lived in genocide for the longest time. We want this genocide to turn to happiness, love, sharing, the teachings of elders to live on, to help our young people grow instead of seeing all the ravages of war with alcohol and drugs. I'd like to thank my band, Matthias Colomb, for all the support they have given me throughout the years, and the healers, the traditional healers. I'd like to honor I called my brother in Sandy Bay, Saskatchewan, who has passed on, Raymond Ballantyne. He has led me to believe that there's more to this than all the government has done for us, because we will get back what we ask for, because we believe in the Creator. I honor him today because you saved me from alcohol and drugs, and all the Native workers that used to be alive in Pagadawagan, Caroline Dumas and the old chiefs, Dominic Hart, Pascal. I like to honor those guys. Please help our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have time for one more comment.
Hello, my relatives. I speak on behalf of the northern people. We, the people of the north, have a forest that is being abused by the government. We do hold a court injunction, but it's being violated due to the cause of identity. We cannot identify ourselves if we're native, indigenous, or whatever may be the case the government recognizes us. And we still have to proceed on interpreting ourselves. That's what this court injunction states. But we're still being violated of all our human rights that we were supposed to hold under the treaty stipulations. But we, the residential school survivors, go through this whole process. It's been 3 generations that we customize ourselves to this living conditions, which cannot be advanced. We still go under. We live on maybe $20 a day between 3-4 kids, and we cannot proceed this kind of turmoil of living. So it would be most if the government lived up to its obligations. We were supposed to be entitled to $3,200 a month while living out in a trapline block, but that's been violated too. Even though I guess when they say broken promises, it is one of the broken promises as we, the residential school survivors. Because I had to move back to the city to come and find out what kind of rights I have. And today I still struggle I'm trying to find my identity. Today I have to choose between 6 other organizations where they promise me this, but still, I still struggle. And I hope in the near future that we be recognized as human beings. Higosane, naskumit na api uta.
Hi, thank you very much. This wraps up our panel. We really have covered a lot here this afternoon. Our last speaker, really highlighted that what we're here to talk about, and that is the trauma from Indian residential schools, from colonization, that many of us continue to struggle with our identities, yet we're also in this position where we have to do this very timely and urgent work of research, of groundwork, of trying to think about what it means to bring our children home. You know, in my notes here, again, I'll just reiterate some directives for the Office of the Special Interlocutor that we've talked about. So recognizing leadership who came before us, that this kind of work and advocacy started decades ago, that this question of physically removing remains and what kind of work, but also thinking that entails, the institutions that are not currently recognized, and then a very compelling argument about the building of health centers and resources under our own sovereignty, our own control, that we take ownership over that. And I really want to thank Leah and Marcella here for being so open and honest and generous. This has been an absolute gift. So please join me in thanking them today.